Okay, and welcome to a tracking review. So I'm going to be doing these videos from now on. This is a track that Sabre and I did back on the 24th of June 2025. It's a 1500 meter long track, and just to set up for you, I had Lewis and Diane from Manhunt Canine come down to my local area and we set up a training development day for our dogs. Because sometimes when you run tracking workshops and you're the coach, you're the instructor, you're the assessor, you don't get to run and train your own dog. So I enjoy these opportunities when a fellow trainer comes down and we can test our dogs and see how they are going. Because obviously I'd like to track more, but this is just one of those things you have to be prepared to forego when you are a trainer in tracking. So, a bit of background. I pushed this track out to 1500 meters. So this is the longest track Sabre's ever done. And I have it recorded both on video as well as on the top right hand screen here. You'll see a overlay of the track and the dog, the track layer and the dog, and you can see a little dog figurine. That will give you a representation of where we are actually on the track, so you can follow along at home and have a bit of, I guess, awareness of where we are and what we're doing. So just with these videos, I talk to you a bit about what's going through my head, what's happening in the dog's head, and what makes a successful track and some of the pitfalls and challenges that you may come across when you are out on the track with you and your dog. So we started the track not long ago. I believe it's around about half an hour age, if my memory serves me correct. But for the main purpose of this track was just to see how far we can push our dog. And I've done a kilometre track. Now the next step is to a 1500 metre total unknown double blind track. So for those who don't know, double blind just means that no one knows where the track layer went. Only the track layer herself in this situation knows where the track is, and we can only rely on our dog's body language and tracking skills in order to get us to the end of the track and find that track layer. Sounds simple enough, doesn't it? But it isn't. Quite a lot of things can go wrong when on these tracks, so it's imperative that you pay attention to the dog, and because they are the only key to get you to the end of the track. So as well as on this track, you'll see my son there, Marcus, he's tagged along for this journey. And yeah, so right now we've completed a couple corners and we're just cruising downhill now. And as you see with Sabre, he is working. This is her tracking stance, so I'm confident that's where the track has gone. Her nose is down, her tail's up. She's got a distinctive gait, which I've, spent years behind watching it, so I know when we are on a track and when we aren't. So right now we're on the track, and throughout this track and video review, you'll notice that the only time Sabre stops tracking is when we've gone past a corner, which is a massive benefit for me, because as soon as I know Sabre's head comes up and she's no longer doing her tracking cadence, her tracking pace, I know most likely that's because we've come across a corner and for her to go into her self-casting procedure, which we train from the very beginning. So we lay these foundations in order to be able to rely upon them when the time comes. So on the track now, we'll be coming up to a clearing, and yeah, that's another thing I want to talk about. So right now, this environment, beautiful tracking environment underneath some pine trees, really great source to preserve and hold odor. Okay, so it's going to reduce the effect the odor is going to have from the wind, the sun. Really great sort of tracking environment. And you'll notice here, as Sabre goes out into the open, that the tracking pace reduces. It's a little bit harder for her now because the environment above the track has changed. I find that's really interesting to see. Okay, so we've come out, and quite often, this can happen to you when you are tracking on your dog. All of a sudden, your dog's going so good, and we changed something different, and now look what's happened. A little bit slower, a little bit more unsure. So I hold my feet, I stay still, I wait for my dog to give me an indication what we're doing before we move off. Yeah, and it's also very muddy here. There was a lot of rain around this time of year around this place this time last year. So I'm still just seeing that Sabre's going off in her own self-casting procedure, which is what we teach and we work on for situations like this, okay? So I'm not panicking. I'm just allowing my dog to do a thing. Bang. And right there, gave me something. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'll keep that in the back of my mind. Do we get anything else? So a key skill of being a good handler is reading your dog's body language, reading your dog's tells and what's it giving you in order for you to understand what's going through the dog's head. And we've had another change of behavior here. And what's my dog telling me? Another one there. Okay, great. So it was like 2 in short succession there. I'm happy my dog's now back on the track. I'm happy that dog is tracking, so I'm going to move forward, okay? But you saw in that little opening, it took a little while to get the bearings of where we're going, and that's going to happen on every track, especially when you start pushing these tracks out longer distances. You're going to have moments where your dog overshoots a corner. You're going to have moments where they've lost a track, and it's what you do in these moments that will dictate whether you will have a successful end to that track or you might even have a failed track. So I'm coming up near to a corner. And I just want you to pay attention to the differences in pace, tracking cadence that my dog goes throughout this track, and also the relation to the environment that we are in during those changes. So still in an open environment, obviously overshot a corner, my dog's working, and watch your body language here. Is there a cue? Is there a tell? So what we're looking for is a head snap or a confident pull in a direction, which is what I'm getting now. So I'm going to go with that and allow my dog the opportunity to keep tracking, because that's what it's doing, and that's the only way we're going to get to the end of the track and find that track layer. So Lewis, who's filming, is the owner and operator of Manhunt Canine, along with his partner Diane, who's latest track. They are based in the Sunshine Coast of Queensland. If you're ever in that area, I highly recommend hitting them up for some of their tracking workshops they do. Lewis is very knowledgeable and is an excellent teacher and will help bring the most out of you and your dog. Diane is hands down the best track layer in the world. I've never seen someone lay a track as well as she does, and she does it with a smile on her face as well, which always makes my job as a tracking instructor easier. So hit them up if you're ever in the Sunshine Coast, Manhunt Canine. Check them out on all the socials. So now you see we're going back into a different environment, back undercover, and watch how my dog's intensity picks up again. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you're tracking with your dog, that it's not just what's on the ground, but it's about what's above your dog as well can play a part. And namely because things like the sun plays a huge role in what it does to actual scent that's on the ground, okay? You can imagine UV is absolutely one of the biggest factors we have to deal with when we're looking to track, because a UV will kill and destroy any bacteria that is off-gassing and producing that scent. So now we're back under the canopy. My dog's giving me clear confidence that we're on the track and I'm following, knowing that we are in the right place, doing the right thing. So I think we got a road crossing coming up here. So it'll be interesting to see how Sabre handles that. Now I'm also using Lewis's tracking line here, which is a leather tracking line. Now there's a lot of different opinions about different dog equipment and whatnot, and I personally use a material tracking line. It's actually a horse lunging lead, so horses for courses there. But in terms of practicality, I highly recommend and rate this leather tracking line. Why? I guess the benefits and pros would be that it is less likely to create a snare and a tangle on these branches and leaf litter. It's not going to pick up any sort of debris. So we did a road crossing there, and I'm expecting, I'll come back to the lead talk, but we'll go back a little bit actually. And so we came into the road, my dog's still in odor, still working, and takes me right across the road. Now, across the road here is pristine tracking environment. So this is where you can start getting in your own head as a dog handler. Because when you start making assumptions, never assume when it comes to tracking, okay? Because if you assume, then you're no longer reading what your dog is telling you. So I thought we were going to go straight across the road into that next bushland area. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, well, I guess we're not going there. I better fall back in line behind my dog. So when you're tracking, you always want to be behind your dog and following where they are. I'm looking ahead. I'm seeing. So I'm like asking, like, really? Diane wouldn't have gone into that beautiful tracking location under that canopy. She would walk along the road. Okay, well, I have no other reason to doubt my dog, but I really would imagine you'd go through there. And this is where you can start getting in your own head. So what I'm trying to say is trust your dog, okay? That was a big one. When I was back in the police dog unit, that is saying trust your dog. Because your dog will never lie to you. You know, things might get tricked and you might get taken off path, off the track, but it will never lie to you, especially in this situation. Okay. So, things like this happen on the track. The best thing you can do is not make it an issue, okay? If your dog needs to go to the toilet, hey, let it go to the toilet. If it's going to defecate, it's going to go, urinate, that's not the time where you start adding in corrections. Just try to keep it as no big deal as possible. Get your dog back working as soon as they are finished, okay? So that's normal stuff. It's going to happen to everyone, especially on these longer tracks. So I remember when we were doing our assessment tracks back, I was in the police dog unit. If your dog defecated or urinated on the track, it was a fail. But not here, okay? Like that's, that's not reasonable. It's just a total normal thing to happen. But yes, back to what I was saying is trusting your dog is what's going to get you to the end of the track. And it's a lot easier said than done, especially if you think, well, why wouldn't you go down there? Try and get out of your own head what your dog is telling you. And sure enough, you look at the overlay here, my dog's doing the right thing. So, looking back in hindsight, it's easy. But as well as what was getting me, I remember, is the dog's intensity's come down again. It's no longer tracking at a pace that is giving me as much confidence as we were when we were under the canopy. But she's given me enough to tell me we're tracking, okay? So what do? You keep going with your dog. You trust the process, you trust the training that you can fall back on, because that's all you got really. There's no other way I would find Diane, the track layer, in this environment had it not been for my dog. So all I'm doing is, giving my dog the opportunity to do what it does. So here again, you're like, oh, what's happening? Why is she slowing down? Give me something. Okay, we're back on again. So that was actually quite a big indication there. I'll rewind it a touch so you can see here. I was thinking, oh no, I need something, and then bang, yeah. So that intensity really, confirmed it to me. No, this is where the track is, because my dog's tracked now a couple 100 meters along the roadside here. So we must be on the right path. Okay, so my dog's gone off the track there, and that's going to happen, but it's what you do in these moments that's key. By the way, the wind is blowing as you're watching the screen from right to left. So Sab's gone off the track here. She wants to investigate here. I'm not convinced that's where the track's gone, because she hasn't given me that confirmation yet. So I hold my feet. I'm asking her the questions. Hey, what are we doing? What are we doing? She wants to come back down and go again. Yep. I try and gather up some lead. Okay, so let's go back to the lead conversation. Obviously, rolled leather is, in my opinion, the best type of lead you can have. The downside is its cost, as well as the maintenance that it requires. Biothane is great in wet weather, but it does burn your fingers and it's hard to let out under pressure. Cloth is sort of like the middle ground, so the best of both. We'll tangle and we'll collect a lot of, thistles and grass seeds and be more likely to get tangled around a tree. But, each your own. It's what's available to you as well, okay? So that's another thing. I like to track with lead to spare, okay? You would have seen back there maybe 40 seconds ago, Sabre hit the end of the lead. And that's the last thing I want to do, because anytime I have to stop the dog, especially if it's inadvertently, the less likely the dog is going to be to have a successful track. So the more you interfere with the dog on a track, the less likely it is to get to the end of that track. Okay, so your main job as a dog handler is to stay out of your dog's way to the best degree that you can, and only interject and involve yourself when your dog needs it. Okay, and that just takes time behind your dog to understand when and where to get involved. But if you're getting tangled around trees, you're stepping on a lead, getting the dog's legs tangled in the lead and having to stop and fix it, that's all stuff that's not necessary. Okay, then that's going to only hurt your dog's efforts in getting to the end. Okay, because if your dog hits a hard stop when it's on a track, it's going to take that as a correction. Boom. Go back there for a bit. You see that? It actually startled me a bit as boom, bird flies out of nowhere, but didn't bother the dog, and we're continue going. So great work. But yeah, as I was saying, reduce the amount of stoppages. You'll increase the chance of getting to the end of the track. So we're coming up maybe to the last quarter of the track here, and now we're starting to get into the proximity alert zone. So the proximity alert is just talking about when you're getting towards the end of the track layer, they're going to be off-gassing that whole time. So they're sitting there, they've walked a long way, they're sitting, they're pluming off odor. That odor is now getting pushed around in the environment by winds, by just the natural factors of just sitting in a spot. If imagine a gas canister or a smoke canister, it's just constantly putting that gas into the environment, same as a person laying down. So you're going to start noticing changes in behavior from your dog, because the dog's like, oh, I smell someone's close by. What's that going to look like when they're on the track? It's going to look like nose starts coming out, intensity picks up, they might get pushed off the track a little bit more. All signs that you're coming close. Okay, and it's your job as a handler to interpret those signs and see what your dog is actually doing, because sometimes a proximity alert can throw you and your dog way off the track, and then you don't remember where you last were. So here Sabre stayed true to the track the whole way, but I have seen situations where she does get blown off, and we've got to come back and relocate the track, and that's quite a normal thing to do. So at the stage, my dog's still got plenty of energy. She's still tracking with a great intensity. So 1500 meters is very doable. As a handler though, time distorts and distance distorts. I swear you think it's longer than you actually have. Like, it's felt like I was done like double the time and length that I actually had. And that's because when you're tracking, your whole worldview narrows down and become very singular in your vision. You're just watching your dog, and time and distance and sort of disappear. And I knew this would happen, because even if you do like a kilometre long track, you're like, whoa, I'm sure I've done more than that. But yeah, in actual reality, it's just that you're no longer paying attention to how many steps you're taking, because you're so focused and fixated on the dog. Like, how many corners did I do on this track? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 corners. You at the time, you have no idea how many corners that you and your dog go through, but that is the beauty of these longer tracks. And what I'm hoping to do, what I'm going to be doing this season, is looking to see where our upper limit is in terms of distances dogs can track. Okay, so actually tomorrow I'm going to be heading out and laying a 2 kilometre and a 2.5 kilometre and track and running that with Sabre. Once the 2 kilometres is successful, we then can move up to a 2.5 and just increase it by 500 meters each time to see where a failure point is, and ideally getting to the goal of a 10k track. Okay, that's going to be where I want to see this get to, and see is it even possible, because it'd be pretty cool. That would be an awesome journey. Difficulty is getting a track layer that is keen and willing to do it, which I do have, but yes, not everyone has access to someone willing to walk 10Ks in the bush and wait for your dog. But this is coming up now towards the end of the track, and you'll see something interesting happen here. So keep watching. So far my dog's still nose on the ground, so it hasn't hit that proximity alert again. Yeah. So now as a handler, you start using your eyes a bit and going, surely the person must be around here somewhere. And someone even said, oh, I think I see something. And I just say to everyone, shush, don't talk, because I want my dog to figure this out, okay? So this is the problem. This is the puzzle your dog needs to be able to solve, because I might not have seen the person. And this is why you can't ever rely on your own eyes. And why this season as well, I've added a extra layer of difficulty. So the track layer, you'll see how close Sabre actually does get. And this is for real. Like, this is what can happen. Like, just there, bang. Yeah. So, look, like meters away, and still just didn't quite figure it out. And this is real. So what I was saying is, this season I've purchased a camouflage blanket, so the person will be hiding under that blanket, and that's just going to add an extra layer of difficulty for the handler. So I wouldn't be able to just be like, oh, there's the person there. I'd really just have to trust and rely on my dog, which is ultimately what we're working towards. Now, before everyone gets all, worried, like, oh, one of the dog gets scared and they're going to, attack the person because they get shocked. No, look, we will deal with that. Sabre won't do that in the first place. And we're not going to just show the dog that for the first time at the end of the track. We'll introduce the dog so the dog understands there's nothing to be worried about first. But so for the tracks that I have been doing, for the certifications I have been doing, if you finish the certification with the track layer hiding in the camo blanket, that's a level 1 with distinction, a level 2 with distinction, because I feel that there adds that extra level of difficulty to the track and add extra level of realness that, you're not going to be able to always see where the track layer is. And sometimes track layers sit out in the open. But yeah, you see here, she finally picked it up and bang, good job. Got the track layer in the end, and huge reward. Good job, Sabre. And she had a good feed too. So yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed that review. And yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks.